works. And yeah, we should be live at the moment. Just quickly gonna check. Yeah, very messy. Very messy, but we are here. We are live. And I'm just going to do here something very quickly so everyone knows where we're at. I'm just going to tweet out the new broadcast, which is a different one. So, and I'm going to send to you guys. I'm going to send to you guys the link now of where we are at. So I had scheduled this hangout, and obviously we had to cancel it out. Somehow we weren't able to go live, but now here we are, and you got the link already on your side as a message. You might want to tweet it out for anyone wanting to come over. All right, okay, so we're here, and got Karl Oroe. Oro? Am I spelling it correctly?
Yeah, Oro.
Okay, very good. And Richardson.
That's right, Jerry Richardson. Yeah.
Jerry Richardson. Yes, I know you also go by the name of your alter ego. She's your hero of your story, right? Jerry Anchor.
That's right. Yep.
I decided to put your real name. All right. Thank you very much, guys, for coming over. Really appreciate this. Jerry, I have listened to you before on a stream or two, and Karl is the first time. So it's a great pleasure to meet you, Karl. I'm a big fan of your book straight out of the bat.
This is my first time on a stream.
It is your first time on a stream. All right, great. Well, there you go. So for everyone listening, now or later, Karl is in Ireland. Cherry is all the way in Shanghai, which I'm quite curious about that. I'm here in London, UK. First of all, I just wanted to really share Karl's work here for you guys to watch. He's got a book. He's got a book out, which I'm just gonna share here very carefully because this interface of Google, the button to stop the broadcast is right on top of the button where I can share the screen. So let me just see if I can share the screen here. All right. All right. So this is your book, right, Karl?
Yeah.
Okay, Death's Warrant. All right. Okay. So first of all, let me ask you, man. I mean, this is great. I mean, I love the style here of the logo, very 70s style. I mean, the whole cover really kind of makes me think of those 70s movies and early 80s movies. You say one of your inspirations is Kurt Russell and Escape from New York, I would presume, right?
Yeah, definitely. The main character is definitely like a Snake Plissken. He looks like Kurt Russell. He is just a sort of badass, just an outright 80s badass.
It's pretty cool, man. I mean, listen, you do all the art, right? You do this.
I write it, I ink it, I draw it, I pencil it, I color, I letter.
Okay, so let me ask you one thing. You're doing all this digitally, or when you said penciling and inking, is it also digitally? All digitally, okay. Yeah. So one thing is Revolve Comics. What is this? Because I noticed these guys have other books. By the way, anyone wanting to get this is at Etsy, and I have already put the description below the video. You will find a link directly to this. Really cheap, £4 a book. Very well printed, and these guys, Revolve Comics, So this is an imprint based in Ireland, I would presume, yeah. And they got other
Yeah.
titles. You want to tell us a little bit about these guys? Where do you actually found them? How did
Oh
your
well.
association started with these guys?
Well, Danny McLaughlin, who basically runs Revolve, like he is Revolve, and he writes the other creator book Solstice. Uh, I was finishing college, and he was like, "I got this job. Do you want to draw it? It's like this how much it pays." And because that's the thing with Revolve, on there's also a lot of like corporate sort of books we do.
All right.
So there's charity books, like I do a mental health book. I work on a mental health book called Uber Heroes. There's a book that deals about teaching kids about diabetes. I think we're trying to. There's going to be history books in the future and stuff, which is on like a complete other end of it. And then there's our like creator stuff that the corporate sort of feeds into and funds and helps get going. And that's Dead Sworn and Solstice and whatever else comes along. And so I became friends with Downey by doing that. And then I had this idea for Dead Sworn kicking around, and I met him at a convention, and I was like, let's do this book. And then he said to me, all right, in 2 months, give me the first chapter. And I knocked it out.
All right. Let me just present these to everyone. So okay, so the guys hired you to do this, but this is your own story. Obviously, this is your creation. So they
Yeah,
gave you
no,
kind
I
of
was
a
other work, like they hired me to do first, and then that spun on into this. And so that's other stuff we do. It's just that there's this sort of like corporate corporate creator sort of aspect to Revolve that. Like if you go on their website, you get all the links to the other books, the diabetes book, the mental health book, all these
all
other
right.
stuff that are like
Revolve Comics. Okay, awesome. See, yeah, they got this kind of they got this other title called Solstice, which looks like a Viking kind of comic, isn't it?
yeah, it
Uh,
sort of travels through like a bunch of different mythologies. It's more inspired by like different themes, like one's Nordic and one's Viking, one's Celtic, and one's Japanese and one's Egyptian. You know.
all right. Well, that one is pretty polished, man. From what I can see here, I am eagerly waiting to just for a couple more days. Actually, I'm just as soon as I have time, I actually gonna get myself the copies. So there's issue 1 and 2, and I'm definitely gonna get this, and I advise everyone to get it. You have a it's very polished, man. I mean, this is amazing work, and I wanted to ask you. I mean, what's your background? I mean, you're still a young guy. Are you an art school guy? Are you self-taught? I mean, do you do commercial work besides this? What's your story?
Um. Well, I like finished. I went to like a 2 year college course like a year ago. So yeah, I don't know. I'm new to this, man. I'm a baby. I
It's
don't.
carry on, carry
I'm
on.
not. Yeah, I'm not. This is just my new stuff. I'm new.
Oh, so you've
I've
never
done
done
much
anything
else.
before this, no?
I've done small little like my own weird anthology web comics trying to get out. This is my first go at really doing a full like trying to get the most sort of commercial looking, the most professional looking thing
Yeah.
out there.
Well, I
You know?
gotta tell you, man. I mean, this is pretty awesome. You know, the thing is that the problem with a lot of indie books, you know, and it's a struggle for every single one of us that um, don't have industry experience, so to say. It's there's always a debate. There's always a difficulty to be able to. There's two sides to make a great comic book, and it's something that's particularly difficult for an indie, which is to marriage the art, the quality of the art, with good storytelling. You know, and a lot of it is in the way that pages are constructed. And I gotta say, I read a series of these pages, a series of previews. I know you only have these three here, but this is pretty solid. I mean, for a newcomer, I mean, you have a great control over the narrative. I mean, besides the art, I mean, the art is great. I mean, he's got his own style, but I mean, you're doing the colors, you're doing the letters. and everything is on point. I mean, I'll if I'm an art teacher at a college, I'll give you a 10, 10, 10. Because really, I mean,
Oh man, I
mean,
wish you were my art teacher. I was getting in trouble with my comics tutor. I was getting arguments in. I did
really,
like I did a 2 year illustration course, and the only reason why I did it was because I got into like bigger. I got like a 4 year model making course and all this stuff. But I was like, let me see if I could put up with college for 2 years and do this illustration one. In the second year, there was a comic book module, so I
right.
was like, this is it. Like this is the perfect thing for me. And it was not. It was it was just constant arguments. Just teacher that had no knowledge of comics, had no knowledge of sequential art, was an old school animation teacher that had to take on an extra class to keep her job, and that was just it was hell, because it was like it got to the point
It's
where I was basically just her and my year coordinator like had a meeting with me and just said, "Shut up, do the work." Just shut
yeah,
up and do the work and keep your head down.
it's not
And that's where
surprising,
that's
man.
where it
Yeah.
started. I actually there was a different version of this one where the whole year for our comics module we were supposed to produce 3 pages by the end of it. The whole year's work was supposed to be 3 pages. I was like, that's not even a week's work for comics, like, you know.
Uh-huh.
And I we were supposed to thumbnail pages over the Christmas holidays, and I came in with 3 fully finished pages after the Christmas holidays, and
Right.
that got me into a lot of trouble.
No, this is excellent, man. I mean, it does not surprise me that your teacher is a blindfolded guy. They usually are. They're like critics, for movies. They're failed directors, and those guys are just failed artists. Because
Oh,
usually
totally.
goes
Yeah.
the theory goes that only one in 1,000 people will ever make a living as a professional artist. That's a bit of a cynical assumption, but is a hard assumption. But most art teachers in schools and colleges is just a bunch of losers that never had a either never had a chance or never really tried hard enough, and they end up just giving a hard time to the wrong people. That said, usually in art, as far as art is regarded, usually good job are usually two words that should not be put together. So artists should always have to grind hard for their skills. But when the job is good, when the work is good, I mean, there shouldn't be a negative criticism, because if the work is already done and is great, like in your case, then that's it. I mean, I gotta tell you, man, this is all great. I mean, you're using really strong hues here, really strong colors, and it's very easy to muddle up a page when you're using colors around the same tones. And I mean, whatever technique you're using, man, it's perfect. I mean, for example, this
Yeah.
page right here, you got everything in the same spectrum of color, right? You got the purples here, the reds, and it's a dark page, but we can make out everything that is happening. You got the hot chicks, you got the guy here, so commanding the left side of the page, and then again, like I was saying, usually sequential narrative. It's a hurdle that a lot of indies don't grasp. They have a good story to tell. They got the right panels, but then somehow, especially on a page like this, which is like I presume is I read this already, but I presume in the context of your book is an exposition page with basically what is called a talking head page. Talking heads page are kind of they're moving the plot along, but just towards with dialogue, and it's usually
Yeah.
difficult. Sorry, for an indie to be able to do the right kind of shots that are not boring, and that pass on the message of the exposition from panel to panel in the correct and interesting way. And this is perfect. This page straight away here for anyone trying to do a proper comic, or for any art teachers looking at it. You guys learn. This page is perfectly well constructed, because you present here the character with his bodyguards. You got a second shot here Now he's looking sideways, and you kind of presume, well, he's not looking behind. So if he's looking sideways, to whom is he looking? Because obviously whoever it is off shot. And then you pass on to these two characters, which have a little jibe between the two, and then you realize, well, they're on his side. So this is his profile view. So obviously this is who he's talking to. And then you got another shot of him, which coincides with this one. But then you don't repeat this shot straight after that one. You put it here. And then you have another shot of him. Again, you are forced to repeat the same character, fair enough. But again, you show him from a different angle. And this is what I'm talking about. You have a page like this, she's exposition, he's talking heads, and this is a perfect panel orientation. You manage to do the dialogue here, and it's not confusing, and he links well. There's not too much dialogue either, so that's great. I mean, you do the lettering as well, right? I mean, it's great font, and this is all good. Your colors are super solid. You got kind of this is this kind of watercolor style of digital painting? What would you call this?
Well, I kind of use a digital wash a lot of the time when I'm inking. So I kind of do like a lot of grayscale stuff. So it'll be like that adds a wash, like a kind of watercolory effect. And then when I'm coloring, I use like a ton of textures and the same sort of messy brushes, and then I'll go over that with more like a digital painting stroke thing, you know.
And again, it's very easy when you print these sort of colors. It's very easy for them to become muddled up in digital printing. But I've seen a video where your book is reviewed, and they have actually shown the pages, and it looks great. Once on paper, it looks great. So, man, however you've learned the rules and the techniques, you're doing just fine. I mean, I love this cover. This cover arcs back to the stuff that Marvel was doing with the Treasury editions from the late 70s and the Epic Illustrator. And this is great. He's got that Simon Beasley feeling, and the only thing I've noticed is that I've noticed the heads of these characters, these species, they seem to be a little bit larger, but I presume that's on purpose because all the other ones they're the right size. So is that something? Is that
no?
A stylistic option?
It's just a bad habit I have. I draw heads. I usually draw heads and hands way bigger than I need to.
Oh, but I've noticed all the other ones are about the same size. It's only these guys, the pale guys. So if you presume you have that deficiency, I haven't seen it like that. I've actually seen it as a stylistic option, and this is a great cover. So it's great work all around, man. I mean, then let me just pass to, if you don't mind, let me just pass to Jerry. We're going to speak now about his book a little bit, and then I get back to you about your influences and what sort of comics you like. Now, Jerry, I hope you're still there.
Yeah, here. Actually, flashing between the two, it's a little bit sad. I think Karl's work is brilliant. It looks really amazing there. And Karl, if that's your first book, man, you've got a bright future ahead of you. Really, that's some great work you've got there.
It is very good. Jerry, which is very early for him, and once again, I appreciate him coming over, and he's got his coffee, so I hope.
Yeah.
So now, Jerry book is obviously a different kind of thing. I like it very much. One thing I have to say straight away is just it reminds me a little bit of the art that the guys did. I forget what was the name of the company, but obviously everybody knows the movie is the Yellow Submarine. And I'm not just thinking about the Yellow Submarine because of the iconic references of the anchors and the boats. It's not about that. It's just about this kind. He's got a feel of that design of the late '60s, early '70s. Again, the Yellow Submarine is a different kind of school. They got those big belt trousers and all that, and it's kind of a more abstract kind of drawing kind of a picture. But somehow he gave me that feeling. And I like that art style very much of the early 70s, the kind of surrealistic art style that was used a lot for a lot of record covers, and obviously the Beatles. Again, I forget the director, but it was a conscious choice to use that animation style for the Yellow Submarine. And yeah, I mean, Anchor Face, as soon as I saw it, I thought, another great use of color, discipline of color, which brings me to ask you, and I think I knew the answer, but by now I've forgotten. Is this all hand colored? And I presume if it is watercolor, I would presume.
Yeah, that's right. It's watercolor, hand colored. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So you are working traditionally, so you are inking and coloring on paper. And then you're doing you. Go ahead. Go ahead.
But there are a few pages where I've drawn it on the computer and then I've printed it onto watercolor paper and painted it by hand. But I've stopped doing that now because I'm just not that good at drawing on the computer. Everything I draw by hand turns out to be much better. So there are a few pages in there that are drawn digitally, then printed onto watercolor paper. But
All right.
yeah, I haven't got the skills yet digitally, so it's going to be all by hand. And some of these pages are also just by hand as well. So the second two are
Okay.
all by hand. Yeah.
All right. So you got a mixture of digital pages and traditional pages. So that will be the final product is actually a mixture of those two.
For issue one, it will be, but from now on, it's just going to be all by hand.
All by
Yeah,
hand.
yeah, yeah.
I know a lot of guys that do watercolor finish, I mean, real watercolor finish, not digital one. I heard them saying that sometimes they do scan the ink page, the traditionally worked ink page, and then they scan it and they print it out, and then like I presume what you were saying, they do the watercolor on top of the printed page, not the original one. But that's just because they fear or they prefer not to have the watercolor kind of messing up the inks. Because if it is a printed page, there's less chances of that happening. So I'm not sure if that's something you would be doing, but no
Yeah,
matter
that's a good
what,
idea. I might look into that. Yeah.
yeah, that I heard that. I mean, and this is your book has a great look as the watercolor again. Watercolor is something that a lot of people think is easy because it's usually the go-to first option for when people are learning how to paint or trying how to paint, even as teenagers or adults. But watercolor has a lot to be said about, the mixture of the tones. There's also a lot of work. And again, you've done it very well. So it's something you've been doing for quite a long time. What's also your past here? Did you have commercial work done before? Is it this comics is something you've been doing for a long time? What do you usually do, art related?
Art related, it's a little bit more visual arts, and I went to art school back in the day thinking that I would learn how to paint and draw technically, but it turns out I went to a conceptual art school, so it was all about abstract art and the idea behind everything. So I was a bit disheartened at first because no one was teaching me how to draw. No one was teaching me color theory or anything like that. So by the end of the course, I learned to appreciate it. But coming from that sort of a background, this is my first comic book, other than just silly books I would draw when I was in middle school, and yeah, this is the first attempt at a comic book for me. So I've got a long way to go, but it's been good so far.
Yeah, and again, I think somebody already gave you this question. You're not a tattoo artist, but you do like these sort of designs, isn't it? Which is sort of a sailor tattoo esque design that you find, and there's a lot of southeast iconography here as well. So is this you like to do logos, or you actually provide tattoo designs for tattoo shops? Because I understand you're not a tattoo artist yourself, right?
That's right. I'm not. And I've got a few friends here in Shanghai who are tattoo artists, and maybe I'll head along and give it a try after I do a few more of these designs.
Yeah.
But this style of the book is definitely influenced by Norman Collins, the Sailor Jerry tattoo artists, and other artists of that era.
Oh yes.
So they're the other ones you can see in the background there.
Yes.
And those tattoo flash sheets, yeah, they're also using watercolors and inks
Awesome.
for those. So, yeah, basing it on that style.
So I gotta ask you, man. I mean, you went from Australia to, I think you spent some time in Japan. Is that right?
That's right.
It's a great country, and you were influenced by manga as well. Is this something you like? Because obviously, I don't see any influences of manga here, but is something you've dabbed on, or will dab on in the future? Some manga style comic books, or that's not in your plans?
Yeah, possibly. I'm thinking that each country this character goes to, it will influence the style of the book. And if it is manga, I don't think I'd be drawing it. There's a few people who I'm connected to over here in China, and they do manga style artwork. So I may work collaboratively with them to. I think that would be interesting to see the style change as he changes different locations. Maybe in China it would be more the traditional ink paintings. And Japan, it could be the traditional tattoos, or it could be some manga, depending on what adventures he's on. But for sure, it's a possibility.
Oh, that's a very nice idea. So each issue will be a different country, and then for each different country, the issue will be stylized in a different way, a different fashion. Very good, very nice idea. So you're in Shanghai now, and you're an art teacher, right? You teach some art there in Shanghai. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Very good, very good. Well, there you go. Carl, you see, Jerry here can teach some lessons to your art teacher.
But I'm teaching to little kids. I'm teaching, 3, 4, 5-year-olds.
Yeah, that's the correct age of the Carl's art teachers. Yeah, that's the right one. Yeah, you're on the right. That's the correct ballpark. So very good, man. I mean, this obviously is your Indiegogo page, and you didn't have a very big fixed goal here. What's the plan here with this such a modest asking price? So these will cover your printing costs of this. So is it a 32 pages comic book, right? So
That's
you're
right,
happy.
yeah.
You're happy with this fixed goal? Will this be enough to print for everyone? Well, I guess so. I guess you're printing there in China. So is it what sort of printing style you're using? Is this offset paper? Is this going to be newsprint? Because again,
So I'd sent a picture, actually a video off to a few printers of just the regular Marvel DC comic book with the thicker cover and the pretty nice paper. The printing in China is pretty flexible. I could print 1 book or 10 books or 100 books, and obviously the more I print, the cheaper it gets. But it's fairly cheap and fairly flexible. If I print 100 books, it's going to come out to be around $4 to $5 American per book. So I can set it just on that 100 limit. And so I was going to be printing these anyway, because I'll be going to some different Comic Cons over here, just in the Artist's Alley, and then just having some fun with it that way. I didn't have any huge plans with it. I'd sort of build it up slowly. But I figured now that it's finished, I may as well put it up here on Indiegogo and see if there are some other people interested, maybe to check out if Indiegogo is a good platform to show the book off on. And but really, I'm coming into this brand new, so I was gonna be asking Karl as well about Etsy, if that platform works, or if there's other suggestions on how to get the book out there, or the best ways to move forward with that. So I mean, Karl, how's Etsy been? Has your book been up there for long, or?
It's been up for a bit. Usually we try to, if there's an upcoming event around the time I have a book out, we'll launch it there, and then a week later we'll put it up online. But I don't handle any of the shipping or any of that stuff, so I don't know a lot about it. I just see when people go like, "Hey, I ordered it," and then they get it, and I'm like, "Cool." But
yeah.
I don't know I don't even know how much they take off it. I assume that they would take some amount off of it, but I don't deal with that. We mostly sell locally. It's only recently that I'm starting to get some attention from like the States or whatever.
Yeah, well, your work is worth it. So I'm sure if you keep doing it, you're going to get more and more attention. from overseas for sure. But I think any platform they're going to take something off the top, aren't they? So yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of weird. I think probably doing if you're anyway like if you know how to make a website or anything and you know how to do it yourself, you know, I think trying to keeping it closer to home is the best way to do it when you're doing smaller stuff, you know.
For sure, yeah, and I like the idea of marketing it yourself and putting it out there yourself as well, and it seems like an interesting time to be involved in this medium as well, to be able to publish it yourself or get it out there, and there's so many different options, there's so many different platforms, and yeah, it's great for creators, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you might want to get in touch with those Etsy guys. Not the Etsy guys, the Revolve comics. Afterwards, if you want some more exposure and maybe sell your books here in Europe. Right now, your book on Indiegogo, you still have a your campaign still has a whole month left, right? So you can still raise quite a lot of significant dough here. You've done a very small fixed goal, so you still got a whole month. Your book is $20 plus shipping, right? So you get the whole 32 pages book, and it's 26 or 32 pages. I think it was 26 initially, but then you've decided to add a few more to that, right?
That's right, yeah. So I mean, the price point I was going for something similar to the other books up there, and I've only got $5 shipping there. So I knew that some of the shipping is actually going to be factored into the $20 price point. But when I was looking at the other projects, they're going up to 46 pages, and so I
Yeah.
thought now that the book's finished, I've got this time while the campaign's on to add those extra pages. So I've been working on those recently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at the $20 price point, obviously, you price your book whatever way you prefer. But yeah, it's probably a fair assumption to add a few more pages to it, simply because you will have, chances are you will have more people coming over and actually getting that perk, because they'll be getting a 32 pages book. So for $20 is fair enough for a special book that you can only get at the moment on Indiegogo. That's the way I always see it. So with Deathsworn, Carl, I mean, you're doing quite well with this independent launch through this label, or are you thinking on a? Do you have any other projects that you're planning on taking to a crowdfunding platform? Maybe anything else in the works?
Yeah, there is. I posted a design, like character designs, up on my Twitter the other day of the Tuatha De Danann, basically the Irish Celtic, gods, that Celtic myths. And I've before I did Deathsworn, I was planning on doing a book about them, doing a comic about them, and doing it my own way. And I was gonna go and try to publish them because there's some Irish publishers here that do, your basic sort of Irish legends, Irish history, graphic novel type books. And so I was gonna go and try pitch it to one of them, and then I started doing Deathsworn, and I think now looking at it, like Deathsworn is gonna be 5 issues of this story or this arc, whatever. I think Deathsworn definitely is open enough and large enough to continue on and be like a series,
Mhm.
But I definitely want to get the first 5 as main, like the main arc, the main story out, and then maybe see if I can do something like that with that book, with the Tuatha De Danann book, and just do a full 100-page book. Get like a quarter or half of it done, and then launch it on Indiegogo or something and see where it goes. And that gives me time to build up everything in between that with doing the next 3 Deathsworn issues. So that's the plan now.
Awesome. You
Finish
wanted to.
this one, get a bigger following, and then launch.
Well, I mean, you're doing it's doing quite well at the moment, I think, I presume. But I think you wanted to share some. At least you got the cover of issue 3 ready, something like that. Do you want to share any upcoming pages? If you want to share, you can try to do it now if you are able to do that.
All right, is it on? You
Yeah.
guys see it?
Yeah. I'll just stop talking and you can just explain what we're looking at so we can see it all the time, basically.
Okay, I think if you click on my yeah. So if you click on my image, I think it
Yeah.
goes like it shares it.
Yeah, it will be just you. Yeah, that's fine. I've done it. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, this is just the I've been working on the cover for issue 3, chapter 3.
Lovely.
I think this is where I've gone in. This is what I like most right now. I might end up changing it a bit, but here it is with the logo and
Awesome.
face and everything.
Sorry, man. Is the logo also done by you?
Yeah, I did everything. And even this, see the little weird, I don't even know what the name of it is. It's sort of like corner box art, but it's not. It's the little character in the corner in the crosshairs.
Yeah.
I love that. I don't know. I just thought.
Great.
I think that's badass. I was seeing books doing that. I robbed that off of Deadlock. Rich Buckler's Deadlock. Yeah, they had the little Deadlock in the corner of the books, but so yeah, that's the cover for chapter 3.
Great cover.
Finished up some other work literally today that was sort of in the way of me really getting straight into chapter 3. So from now until I get it done, I'll be completely launched into getting number 3 out.
Awesome. So this is
take as long as, sorry?
Is it almost ready, number 3? Almost finished?
No. It's we're thumbnailing now. So
okay.
Get the thumbnail in.
We're getting it structured.
I think, yeah, I have to get structure, and I tend to write by thumbnailing. I kind of think that's a better way to. I mean, I don't know, you can do comics whatever way, but I think because they're visual, it's always better to thumbnail by with images to write what images in your head, because you actually you're using action, physical movements, and actual imagery to move the story through instead of relying on dialogue or writing out tons of this stuff, you know. So I usually just write it by just drawing endless amounts of pictures and then just minimize, and slap it into some panels, you know.
Do you? Well, actually, I've been praising your art, but you haven't had an opportunity actually to pitch the book. Do you want to just give us the kind of a short summary of what Death Sworn is all about then?
Yeah. All right. Well, Death Sworn is an 80s inspired action adventure space fantasy. Basically, it's set in a universe where there is this evil empire of solar stealing sun vampires that basically go to a solar system. They commandeer the sun and start to suck it of its energy. And by doing that, they enslave all the planets in that solar system, that planetary system. And they trade sunlight for slaves, and they are basically taking over the galaxy and ruining lives everywhere. And Death Sworn is not the kind of guy that goes for that. He doesn't relax. I think the best way to describe it is reading the intro from the first book.
Yes.
So I'll just read that. It's basically what you said, but Death Sworn. The galaxy is quickly being taken over by an empire of sun-stealing solar vampires, the Dark Stars, using the energy from suns for their own survival and their takeover. The Dark Stars have enslaved and killed the hundreds of planetary systems. Most of their victims bow to their new leaders, while some rage a personal war against the forces that have taken everything from them. And that's Death Sworn, basically. So he's an outlaw from this Dark Star Empire who is basically set up on an adventure where he gets caught up with a runaway princess and a reluctant bounty hunter, and they try at least to take down the empire.
Awesome. It's cool, man. I mean, it sounds very much. You also got maybe a bit of influence there of what's the name of that series that used to be produced here in the UK? I think it was Blake Seven. Blake Seven, yeah. Do you know that Blake Seven?
No, I've never heard of it.
Well, it's pretty cool. You should check it out. I mean, obviously, it doesn't have anything of that plot, which is it's a group of outlaws, and they kind of take over a ship, and the whole story is them in the ship. There's seven of them, so it's Blake Seven. But um, but I get a bit of the vibe of the bad guys, being vampires.
Yeah, well, there's solar vampires, so they're sort of
Yes,
they instead of hiding from the sun, they actually seek out solar energy.
exactly.
So that's one of the cool things about them. They have to kind of charge up. They're like phones. They go too long, they have to top up their tan in these solar chambers, and that's why they're so rampantly going after suns to keep them alive.
And have you shown the actually completed books to your art teacher when they was dishing out your dishing out your art?
No, I don't even
No.
think. I just don't even think they want to talk to me anymore.
She's go there and shove this down his throat, man.
The funny thing is that I actually I met up with someone from my college course, and it's been about a year and a half, I think, since it. And I kind of said, like, "Have you been back? Like, have you had any reason to go back?" And she told me that she was called in to talk to the comics class. No, I wasn't.
Well, there you go, man. He only proves my point that
Yeah.
art school or any kind of college or university is good up to a certain point, because a lot of times the people that are really talented are just wasting their time in there, time and money. That's why a lot of us are self-taught. I mean, Jerry, I mean, do you agree with this? I mean, this guy has done very well by himself. He's still a young chap, and the teachers were slanging him off. He wasn't good enough.
Yeah. He's got a long, bright future ahead of him for sure. And
It wasn't
I think
that. Sorry, I'll go.
No, go for it. Go for it.
No, it's just it wasn't that. I don't think it was that I wasn't good enough or whatever. It's just sort of like I hated the horrible, structured, weird crap that came with art school. Like it was all this structured exploration and stuff. And I actually didn't get into. I actually failed my first year, and I had to do a summer project to get into the second year because I did a project which I was able to kind of change it into a comic. This 3-page comic based on a historical figure, and because I didn't put any other reference of comic book artists in my notebook, I failed. I was failed the course, and I had to do a summer project to get in because I didn't copy anybody else because I was original.
Yeah. Man.
And that's the stuff. It's like it doesn't matter about your work. It's like have you ticked off this weird box in your notebook to get you in. So that's kind of what I was more getting in trouble with, was that it was this crazy weird, like such a weird structure when it comes to like, and most of these guys are way more artsy fartsy than me. Like I'm pretty straightforward about doing comics. These guys were all like conceptual and weird and into whatever, but they have this real formal way of doing the work. You have to tick every single box if you wanted to get a basic pass.
Well, they got a program and a structure, and they have to obey to that, and it's very difficult for them to go out of that box. I mean, I believe there are moments for experimentation in certain parts of an academic year in as far as art college and university goes. But they really they're forced by the program to go through this A, B, and C of art basically, and that's obviously for some people that have either experienced that before or maybe they're just a little bit more advanced than the actual class. It just becomes a real stress to go through that, and it becomes a struggle. I mean, Jerry, I mean, you're an art teacher. I mean, you have some direct experience with this sort of happenings. I mean, is this something you? I mean, you said you teach to youngsters. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, and for people listening, if they're thinking about whether they should go to college or art school, I would, yeah, I definitely recommend still go ahead and do it. I think there's a lot of value to be gained there, but just realize that you're not gonna get all the answers. You've got to do a lot of the learning on your own, but I think it does open you up to a lot of different ideas and concepts that you wouldn't have got otherwise. And yeah, just realize it's not going to give you all the answers. And I mean, all the institutions are all completely different from each other, and the courses offered are going to range drastically. So research a bit. I didn't research before I signed up for the art school I went to. I just thought, oh, it's art school. I'm going to learn how to draw technically, how to paint technically. But it definitely wasn't that. So yeah, there's a big range in institutions, but if you've got the option, yeah, go ahead and do it, and just realize you've got to do a lot of the work on your own as well. So
Absolutely.
Like
Yeah. I
that's
mean,
yeah.
yeah. That's generally my opinion as well. I mean, that's the advice I give in my kid is before you pick any art school, do your homework. Try to find out exactly what it is that you're going to get into. See if that's really the right place. And like you say, one needs the basics because one always needs to know the rules before he bends the rules. But the best thing sometimes is if a guy already knows most of the rules, is just to be there for a year or two, just kind of get the basics, and then if he believes or if he knows that you already can do the work by himself, then go on your own. What I don't advise is people to to believe that some art degree is the beginning and the end of everything, and they spend like 3+ years and thousands into an art school. I presume most degrees in art are basically 3 years. I presume. I don't think there's anything longer than that. And but in a lot of cases, it could be a potential waste of money if you don't choose the right one. But obviously, it will give you information. It will give you technique. It will give you a lot of things that, in, by experience, sometimes is very difficult to get a hand on. But eventually, it's a little bit limiting as well. It will only take you so far.
I think it's
So
real limited for, I think a lot of people. It's sort of, well, first of all, like there's people in art colleges, in art classes that you're like, man, you should not be here. You just wanna drink, you know? Like you're just here for the party.
I
And
thought it was law school only.
yeah, and there's those people, but then there's also sort of a lot of I found out a lot of art colleges sitting around, like waiting for like a class gets canceled or tutors come in. You're just waiting, and then you're traveling. Maybe some people be traveling up to 3 hours a day, and that's just to get into the city and then to get out to their college, or like this is the story for everyone. And then on top of that, they're probably working part time as well. So it's like after you get finished sitting around in college doing nothing, and then you get finished at your part time job, like what time do you have to actually what or like how do you have energy for any passion, you know?
Yeah.
It's like take the part-time job and do it all at home. Or like I really think that YouTube has opened me up to like a whole new level like of other stuff that I would have gone into, like on YouTube. Like I like history and I like psychology and I like psychoanalytic stuff, and like YouTube just opened up a whole new world where you can go and listen to some crazy lecture from the 80s or the 90s that's like 3 hours long on YouTube about something that you would never have been like, I'm going to dedicate 4 years to this. But I know that's like it's not official or whatever, but I think that um, it's all just sort of waiting out there for you. You have to do it, and I don't think any sort of institution or college or weekend art class or whatever, if you really want to go like head first into it and just go like crazy for it and really put all the passion and time and effort and blood and tears into it, I think that a lot of college just sort of pushes that back a bit. It's like wait, we have to wait 2 hours till your tutor gets here, you know, or you have to wait 2 hours between classes or whatever. For me, it was like, God, I hated it, man. I know I shouldn't. It was just my experience. I shouldn't use it as like a statement or whatever.
No, I think there's definitely truth to that though, and I mean my experience was that at the end of some courses, I would look back and on the course and think, what was it that I learned here? What was the point of this course or this subject? As sometimes it was really hard to try and figure out what it is that they were teaching in the first place. So it's good not to be too passive. I think for the first while, I was super passive in the courses that I chose, where I would just be sitting there waiting for them to teach me everything, and I could absorb it, and they were going to give me the answers. But if you want to get the most out of it, being active, just like you were saying, Karl, about how active you are on YouTube or the internet with getting that knowledge yourself. That is if you have that attitude in college, then that's the right attitude to have. I was sitting there waiting for people to say, this is what you have to know, this is what you need to learn, but it never really came across that way. So and you're right in terms of the jobs. I remember working a couple of jobs while I was at college and trying to fit in the homework that they were giving out. It was just there was it was pretty jam packed. So but yeah, be active in the course for sure, and just don't expect them to be giving you everything.
One thing has got to be said, though. Obviously, the internet now is a big help, is a big tool, and obviously, yeah, you can go on YouTube and see a lot of tutorials that even 10 years ago you could not. There was no possibilities to watch it. We got to remember, obviously, that learning and teaching art learning up to 20 years ago, even 15 years ago, it was still very limiting to actually getting books from libraries and having to go to classes, either college classes or night classes, or obviously enrolling into higher education for art. So yeah, I mean, the landscape has drastically changed within the last 10, 15 years. Let's clock it at 15 years. But yeah, I would say that anyone coming in now, even us, the guys that already been doing it for some time, but they just need to, just they want to learn a little bit more or to try different styles. It's easier now. It's easier now. Now, obviously, there's a lot of content out there, and it's at least the information you get hold of now. It's in parallel. I mean, for example, I remember back in the mid 90s, when I was starting to try out the American format of US comic books, start trying to do some sequential pages in that format. I had no access to the actual measures. I had to go down to the libraries and find books on American comics to find out basic information, which obviously for anyone living in the US, it's fine. Even in the mid 80s or 70s, they would just walk out to their comic book shops and probably find some paper there, some art paper that they could probably use as a drawing board, as a page, as a drawing page. But being in Europe, that wasn't readily available unless you would actually find an art book explaining that about that subject. Obviously, now you do a Google search, and in qualities of paper and sizes of papers, and that's it. The information is right there. It will take a 1 second or two for you to get that information, and from there, you take your affair from there. So that's that needs to be noted that all these I think this has helped. This expansion of knowledge, readily available, has helped to a lot of new artists to come forward. People that otherwise will probably still be in the closet, so to speak, either young or old. if it wasn't for this amount of content we have now readily available to everyone. And Jerry, listen, you want to do a pitch of your book as well? I mean, your guy, the anchor face. We've talked about your art style, but we haven't talked about the hero itself. So this is a very unusual character. Got an anchor on his face. Now I want to know one thing: is this like a surrealistic, subjective thing, or is it a real practical thing? This guy is the anchor on his face, kind of. It's is organically his face, or is something that detaches from his face, and then he can use it. And when you say he's got the powers of an anchor, what exactly are those powers?
Yeah, the powers of an anchor. Yeah, so the object on his face, this anchor, it's one of these enchanted objects. In the story, most of the powers that superheroes have come from these enchanted objects, and so his has been attached to him, and through this process of welding, this enchanted welding, so he can't take it off. No one can take it off, and so he has the powers that come with that object, and so he can breathe underwater. He can pull on the chains of gravity and become extremely heavy, and in doing so becomes extremely dense as well. So he can pretty much become bulletproof or an immovable object. And so although the anchor has almost a mind of its own, it will protect Anchor Face's life no matter the situation. So, for instance, if he gets shot, he's going to suddenly become heavy, and which can cause him a little bit of trouble. Also, if he gets too deep in the water, for instance, the water pressure will become too strong for him to ease the powers off. So he could get kind of stuck at the bottom of the ocean. And so he's got to be careful with how he uses it. But this process of welding these objects to a person, that's a lost art form. So there really isn't any many heroes who have these objects attached to them. So most of these objects, these enchanted objects, can be taken off, and so they're highly sought after. So certain heroes will have powers for a certain amount of time, and then they'll lose that ability to someone else. They'll be stolen or passed on. So yeah, that's a bit of a summary. The story, he had been double crossed on one of his missions. He's a veteran hero who's led many superhero teams, and he gets double crossed and goes missing at the bottom of the ocean somewhere for 10 years. And when he finally resurfaces, slowly walking back to shore, he finds that everything has changed. All the superheroes have been decommissioned, and only one government-approved superhero team remains. And all the heroes were forced into exile, or they were locked up. So he gets on the wrong side of this new team, and he's also forced into exile. So he sets off on a mission around the world to find his old team members and try to regroup the team, try to find out what had happened over the past 10 years, and to see if he can do anything about getting back home and fighting for the country and the people he loves. And on his way around the world, finding his old team members, he goes on many different adventures and meets some new heroes and some exotic monsters and bizarre cultures, and so it's definitely an adventure story with that superhero element to it.
Okay, well, it all sounds very cool, but so basically, obviously, this is a book for all ages, or is just aimed at adults, or what's the demographics here?
It's kind of aimed at adults, but it's not gory, it's not horror to the level that a teen or maybe even a kid could read it. It would be safe for them to read it, but I think the humor and the way I'm writing it, it's aimed for adults. So yeah.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, okay, so he has his anchor on his face, and how does he see and how does he eat?
So this is the thing. So, yeah, all these objects have these negative repercussions that go along with the power, and the negative repercussion here of this anchor is it's slowly wiping his memory, so he can barely remember back past 20 years. So it also preserves his life, so he he could live forever, but he doesn't know how long he's been around for. He doesn't know how he got this anchor, or where he comes from. So yeah, he doesn't know how it attached to him, but he can still speak. He can still eat, all of those types of things. So yeah.
All right. Okay. So yeah, that kind of answers the question. So it's a real practical thing. It's just it's simply not just an allegory of some kind. So this is an actual anchor in his face. And
That's right. Yeah.
these guys who you mentioned there, well, he kind of takes himself as a superhero, and he has a band of heroes that work with him. But all these people that get these enchanted objects, they're all heroes. There's no villains as well. How does that society works?
Yeah, the same way. So if you have an object, you could be a hero or a villain depending on how you use the object, and some of the negative repercussions of the object could start to change you in a way where you become a bit of a villain. And I think it's that in this world there are going to be a lot of heroes who aren't particularly superheroes. So they're a part of these teams, but they don't particularly have superpowers. So the objects, there's not too many of them. They're a little bit more rare than they're not. So there's definitely a lot of heroes, but a few superheroes with these
All right.
objects. So yeah.
Hey, is there any pages you want to share here apart from the ones that are on your Indiegogo page, or anything else you want to share on the screen here? If you want to screen share anything.
At the moment, it's not up on my computer. So if people want to check out those pages, yeah, it's just on the Indiegogo.
All right, that's fine. And so, what's the plans after this Indiegogo campaign? I mean, did you mention how long this story is for? I mean, how many issues is it? What's the plan with the Anchor Face story?
The plan is for it to go on as long as possible. I mean, the story arc ideas I have could just go on for forever. So I'm just going to see how long I can ride this wave, and yeah, hopefully just build it up from here, issue by issue, getting better and better. And yeah, there's people who over here, some of my neighbors there, they have their own design studio. They used to be game designers, illustrators, and now they're doing the toy design, the art toy designs, urban vinyls, that type of thing. So they're suggesting that I cooperate with them, and they can help with the illustration and the coloring, and they'll be translating it for me into Chinese. So I'm thinking whether I cooperate with them or not, but that would definitely pick up the speed of the release of these books. And
Right.
but I want to keep going on as long as possible. I mean, at the moment, I'm working a regular full-time job, so this is a side project.
Yeah.
But one day, if this takes over, that would be such a dream, to be able to wake up and focus on this for the whole day. So we'll see where it goes. This is the first book, so yeah, I just wait for some feedback after this first one comes out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, you didn't mention that. If as Anchor Face goes to different countries and different exotic regions, issue by issue, you might have different artists coming in and doing the work with their own styles. But that's a great idea. I was just wondering if you have a long story arc for the character, but as you just answered, you're gonna take it as it comes, so that's fine. That's usually a lot of great narratives usually work wonderfully like that when a guy just has a basic plot outline, but then you go with the wife. A lot of interesting things might come from that. So, very good. Well, I
He
mean,
reminds me of sorry.
go ahead.
He reminds me. He's like a. He reminds me of Hellboy in a way that like you can just drop him anywhere. Like you can drop Anchor Face anywhere. It works. You can put him in any world at any timeline or anything, and it's just gonna be fun. Like even the way you have him waking up at a tree, and I guess that's just the beginning of the entire story. Like he's just sleeping at a tree. That's all you need to know. It works perfectly, man.
Thanks. Yeah, I hope so. I hope he's that kind of character. Yeah.
Yeah, you could start a story with him stepping out of an elevator, and I'd be hooked.
Don't know if Karl has any knowledge of the Comics Gate all movement that is going on now. Karl, are you aware of that? I know you. I presume you are.
Comics game?
Yeah. Is it
Yeah.
something that you've noticed happening and all that, right? And so what? Go ahead. What's your position on that?
I'm trying to think of when I started noticing it, and I think it's because everybody acted so weird about it. The first thing I remember ever seeing that I ever related to this Comicsgate stuff was people calling Ethan Van Sciver a Nazi. And whenever I hear someone throw around an ism or a itsy or a what's it or a whatever, no matter what it is, or a phobic, whenever someone says you're whatever phobic nowadays, I and like you you have to investigate it. You know, it's like because it's sort of this backlash. You know, it's like what are you getting so upset over? And then I kind of looked at it. And I looked into some of the videos, and I was like, no, this is cool. And then I sort of was listening to his videos because he was doing these live streams, these long live streams. And when you're drawn, you need like all you need is audio entertainment. So I would listen to like radio shows and old radio shows, and then I would listen to Ethan's live streams, and I was like, well, this kind of sounds like a Howard Stern sort of show. And then I would hear diversity in comics through him. I'd listen to him, and I was like, oh, this kind of sounds like Opie and Anthony. And that's sort of like I just was sort of in it. Like I don't know if I'm in it, but I was sort of just in that mode of thinking. And then I don't know. It seems so weird because I don't get the other side of it. Like I don't get why there's such a a weird look, like why there's such a weird backlash or a weird feeling about it, you know, that people sort of want to attack it or go after it, or you know, like I get it in a way that I get what the creators, the support, like ever since I started interacting with like, because I think what really got me into it was I started seeing people use a hashtag of Turbo. And this was only a couple of weeks ago. This is when I start like actually interacting with people. I was just listening. Like I barely used Twitter. Like I've had Twitter for like 8 years, and I barely have any followers. You know, because I barely used it.
Yeah, same here.
And yeah, it was just I never liked it because it seemed like all the people you sort of had to follow because it was mutuals or because they were like you knew them or whatever. Like I never dug like what they posted. I never dug what they would tweet about. I never dug what they would talk about. So I never really used it. I was always more Instagram. And when I saw this Turbo hashtag going around, I was like, oh, it sounds cool. And people were using it to describe comics. And I was like, well, that's one. That's like Turbo was like my taste in comics. Like Turbo was like Deathlock, Skull the Slayer, Ronin, Punisher, like all that stuff. I love Mark Silvestri's Wolverine, Jimmy's X-Men, like that. And Turbo to me was like the perfect, concise way to describe everything I wanted out of a product or a book or a style or a voice when you're marketing these things. And I start using that, and then by using that, all these like super supportive, creative people start like just spawning up around me, and then I got to meet all these cool people, and that's like I understand all that. I don't understand the other side of it, where it's like this weird cult of like, you know, a bunch of neo Nazis or something. Like it just sounds ridiculous. It sounds like a Hellboy plot, you know. It sounds like a noir detective issue of like these guys that are underground crazy comic book people that are all secretly Nazis and racists or whatever. I just whenever I hear that stuff being thrown around, I like it makes me sick because I think it like that stuff is actually an issue. Like that stuff is actually bad. Like that stuff exists. You know, like there are Nazis, there are racist and there are places and where people are treated horribly. And when you call someone that wants to draw a dumb robotic frog all those things, you're really missing the point of it. Like you're really doing a disservice to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what do you guys think about the actual Comicsgate name? I mean, I understand the whole thing. It's because of Gamersgate, right? It picks up from that as a reaction to a left wing kind of dissertations. But do you think that this is servicing the idea, the concept, or is it's kind of damaging it a little bit? Because by now, I don't think personally, I don't think something with the name Gate on it. It's I mean, I know the guys have been talking back and forth if they should carry on adapting this nomenclature, but is it, what do you guys what feeling do you have from that name, Comics Gate? Or maybe we should something else should be used. I mean, I know Richardson Meyer, he created the hashtag movement, move the needle, and I think that's a pretty solid one. I think is a more is a cleaner idea. Which means you buy the stuff that you think that it's good, the stuff that is without much political agenda in it. So, what's your opinion really about the actual name, the Comicsgate sequel?
I think that the idea will outlive the name. Like,
oh yeah.
Yeah.
And that there's a problem. Like, it is literally named after like this sort of like it's a parody of actual like political, like Watergate. That's where all these gates things come from. So it's always going to be political, and people are always going to have a political reaction towards it. I've seen people of every sort of political stripe in it, but the main thing is that most people are rational, and also most people aren't using their politics or using what they think about whatever social sort of whatever social norm or social movement people are trying to get pushed through. People are not using that to justify their actions or justify their personality or just like or using it as a personality. Like most of the people that I see and interact with, if they comment on anything political, it's always into a reaction of how extreme it is, whether it's right or left. It's always, this is really, it's fun, it's job, it's life, but it's never swayed in a way. Like I don't really see stuff that's swayed in a certain way, and if I do, it's always balanced. So I think the political side of it it's going to be there as long as people use it. But either, like you can see it go both ways. You can see like people like if Vance Guyver and these big guys hang on to the name, then you can see that the idea of what it should be will die, and then it's just this kind of name that's empty and it's just whatever. It becomes like a alias for their YouTube channel, Or
yes, I understand. Well, what do you think, Jerry? What do you think of this name, Comicsgate? Do you think it suits the movement well? Or do you think it should be replaced by something else? Or do you think it doesn't really matter because it's all just a kind of an ironic statement against the left wing propaganda in the comics?
Yeah, I don't think it matters too much. I think Comicsgate, when people hear that, unless they're interested in comics, they're probably not going to look into it too much. So those people who do look into it, they're going to see it for what it is. I think a name and the meaning behind it is always fluid. I mean, it's like a social justice warrior. They came up with that name on the extreme left to describe how amazing they were, but now it's got so many negative connotations because of their behavior. If anyone looks into what is a social justice warrior, they will form their own opinion based on what they see, the people who call themselves that, what they're doing. So I think if people hear this term Comicsgate, which is a name given to the movement rather than chosen by the movement, if people look into it, they're going to log on to Ethan's stream and see how funny, how lighthearted it is, and how they're a bit ironic. They're not taking themselves too seriously. They're having fun. I think that's that's some great leadership there from Ethan to be able to present that image, because I think he's keeping it fun and lighthearted, so it doesn't swing too far to the other side on the other extreme end. So it doesn't really matter, I think, what it's called. And I mean, Move the Needle, I think that was done by Richard a little bit earlier than Comicsgate. For me, it seems like Comicsgate's more of a 2018 title, maybe halfway through the year or something like that. But Move the Needle maybe was a bit before it, and that was more. Move the Needle was more about proving what books you're buying. I think once you buy it, then you put that up online, Move the Needle. So I think that hashtag still goes around as well, and it does. I don't think it matters too much, but I think Karl's right. The meaning's always going to be changing and shifting, just like anything. So what Comicsgate means next year, we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. Although I think Comicsgate, they started using it last year, I think, on and off. And then, like you said, it just became kind of a staple thing at Ethan Veskiver's channel, which obviously is quite ironic. He likes to use his irony, and sometimes he passes over people's heads that most of the time he's just it's kind of BSing around. It's just, like
I love one of my favorite things about Ethan is the unenergetic he gives after someone says something. If you talk to someone, he'll be like da da da, and he just go and it's so light and breathy, and just you can tell he just did not like what they said at all. Like whatever they said tanked the entire conversation.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, he's quite cold-blooded basically in his streams, meaning he's got to keep a stern face. Sometimes when he doesn't have his face there, a stern voice, meaning that he's almost like an anchor man, really trying to play ball there with two different teams. So he's a smart guy. He's an astute man, so to speak. So okay.
I think one of the cool things about all this stuff is how creator driven it is like gone back to, like everything survives or dies based on like creator, and I think that's something that like people keep kind of relating this back to like the 90s image movement, and like that's not always a great thing to relate to because they did basically implode the entire industry, but the good thing about us doing it, like us or Comicsgate doing the same thing or whatever, is that they don't have the means to implode, like it's so small and we're not coming up with the numbers before we sell the product, like the product is actively being informed now by customers, by how many people actually want to buy it in this kind of Indiegogo pre-order model. So like I think that is just going to prolong it even more, and even like by summer 2019 I can just see it having a completely different face. Like I see the entire landscape changing, by the time every product from this year is out. Yeah, like summer 2019, because that's when everything will be out. Like I think Red Rooster and Cyberfrog and everything well past that, and it's gonna change it completely. It's just because it's gonna give us some feet, it's gonna give us some effort, it's gonna give it some legs to stand on. I think that it's great. Like those big guys have big earnings, but it's only going to get better for even smaller people that are kind of rising up through this.
Yeah, I mean, by then they'll probably be in round 2 already of different titles. I presume they'll be finally delivering the books in the first couple of months of next year, I guess.
No, I'm just saying it'll be so far into it that it will be like it'll be just like. I don't think that there will be any sort of. I think Joe Quesada will stop going after people. That's what I hope. We'll stop trying to go after people.
Yeah, there's quite a few guys there which are out of order, basically.
Well, it's not out of order. I just think it's pathetic. I think it's weird that this Marvel, like the top level guy at Marvel creative, Joe Quesada. Like, I mean, I have volumes of his books right behind me. why are you even, if it's so little and pathetic and evil, why give it your time of day, you know?
Well, it was
Like,
pathetic in the beginning, but now it's just becoming. Some of them are just becoming out of order. So because you really, I mean, I've always said, one thing is to separate the art from the artist. The other thing is when you work for a company and working for yourself, that you cannot separate. You cannot separate the employee from the corporation. You can separate the art from the artist, but you cannot go on social media talking rubbish and then not expect your boss to give you some sort of kind of a tap on the hands, smack on the hands, like you've done something wrong. So these guys,
feel,
they should be conscious that they should have a limit on the crap they say online, which is basically a public forum. Again, they're free to express their own opinions, but they have to remember that if they are employed full time by a major corporation that has a public image, they should be careful with what they say. I mean, again, it's not like you and me, where we're indie guys. We can say whatever they want. The only thing we put at risk is our own brand. These guys are actually playing. When they're playing, they should conduct themselves in a particular fashion. Like, I'm employed by another company during my daytime job, and obviously, while I'm employed by them, I don't open my mouth to say stupid things because I know I have a set of rules to follow. And this is the part that annoys me, is the arrogance of these people. Just because, and I, and that's very very funny because most people today, when in every walk of life, working for any industry, but especially in entertainment industry, these guys, they get a job at these companies, right? Either as editors or writers. It's mostly those two. The artist is a secondary batch, but mostly the editors and the writers. It's just become like, whoa, I got the gig at Marvel or at DC. That's it. I'm on top of the world, and now I can do and say whatever I want. Jesus Christ! I mean, some of these guys are just out of their mother's tits, and the arrogance on these people. It's like, I can do and say whatever I want. The Adder Antos and all those guys. I mean, I understand the older ones like Mark Waid and Michael Bendis. They're already reaching their 60s, so they just don't care anymore. But
well, I
I
think
find,
one of the sort of, like you were touching on it there, that them being like they're working on these corporate icons, these sort of, you know, corporate
yeah,
properties or whatever. And I think one of the things that actually, like, allows them to behave so strangely is that the the publishers, Marvel and DC, they really don't push forward creator driven stuff anymore. And whenever they really do push forward a creator driven book, like say like White Knight by Sean Murphy, like he's one of the greatest pros online you can interact with. And I think it's because you can't separate Batman from him, because he's such a, like the Batman book is so pushed that he's behind it. It's so pushed that it's his creation, that it's all coming from this guy. It's so creator driven. And I think that if these publishers put more creative driven books out, it's not only going to make the books better, but it's actually going to make these people behave better and be nicer and be kinder, because their product isn't just Spider-Man, it's their Spider-Man. It's directly linked to them. And I think, like, it's only better for the art. It's only going to be better for the product, you know?
yeah, absolutely, yeah, and that's very true. Because obviously, every time you hire a specific writer or a specific artist, he's bringing something into the book, and
Yeah.
he puts his own staple on it, and
Well,
it's
that's
interesting.
one of the great things about indies, is that it's such a voice, like such a strong voice coming through, that like nothing here, like none of our books look the same, man. Like Chromosome 96 doesn't look anything like Death Sworn. Death Sworn doesn't, not me, Chromosome 96 and Death Sworn definitely do not look like Anchor Face, you know? But the difference is that they have a voice, and they are aiming for a target, and they're if they're not just hitting that target, they are coming close enough to it. And when I look at a lot of the kind of mainstay books that are being pushed out, whether it's Spider-Man or X-Men or Superman or the Batman run, like they seem aimless, they seem voiceless, you know? Like they seem like they don't have a strong voice of what that creator wanted it to be. It
Oh
just
yeah,
seems
yeah.
like the next edition of a boring serial. And it's like how many of those colored X-Men books do they have out now? X-Men Gold, Blue, Red, Black, Purple, Yellow, whatever. Like none of them
Yeah.
jump out at me. And whenever they put a good artist on it that I like, he's on it for like 2 issues or 3 issues, and then he's gone. So I'm like, all right, I mainly purchase trades. I'm not going to pick up your trade because I'm going to be picking up a 6 issue trade. Only 2 issues of it is of the artist I like that have a voice and that have a direction, and the rest are just fill-ins you picked up. I don't know where you picked them up because Jesus Christ,
Yeah.
some of them are.
But I think if it was driven by the artists, then it would be a lot more interesting. People would want to pick it up. But I think the decisions are being made by the higher ups who are these SJWs who've infiltrated these companies so that they can gain control of the IP. They want to gain control of the narrative. They don't actually care too much about the story. They don't really care about the art. They just want to. This is my opinion. I think they want to put something out there, put some IP out there that they can later use for other mediums, TV shows and movies. I think they find it too difficult to make a new Avengers movie with the lineup of characters that they would be happy with. Without the comic books coming first, you know, if the comic books come first, then they can say, "Oh, we've changed all the characters around in the movie because it's in the comic books." But it's very hard for them to make that change without the comic books coming first. They don't care so much about the sales either, in my opinion. They think, oh, well, whatever, it's just the comic books. We don't care about the comic books. We want this to result in video games and TV shows and movies. But the problem is that the problem for them is that there are a lot of people who are passionate about the comic books and who are speaking up saying, you know, that you can't do this to these characters. Sure, make new characters, but don't destroy what we love. Don't destroy what's already come before it. And you know, when they don't take the medium seriously, then the quality lacks, and they make some silly decisions. So if this movement, if people didn't speak up, if Comicsgate didn't exist, then all the higher ups at, say, Disney would ask people at Marvel, what's going on with the comic book industry? Why is it suffering? And they could come up with an excuse and say something like, oh, people just aren't buying comic books anymore, or, you know, times have changed, it's all video games. But when you've got a movement like Comicsgate raising a lot of money, raising a lot of awareness, then that sort of goes against their narrative of, oh, it's just people aren't into comic books anymore. Because you know, when people are spending money and calling them out, then I think they feel that pressure, and I think they're starting to feel that pressure now. That's why they're starting to crack and lash out on Twitter, because maybe they're getting talked to by certain people who are saying, hang on, what's going on over here? Why are they raising money? Why can't we do the same thing? So yeah, without us, without this alternative voice, then they would probably be able to get away with it. But yeah, luckily that the EVS has sort of pulled things together and made a very strong voice on behalf of the consumer and the creators as well.
Yeah, I mean, you guys touch on a couple of the basic points of the problem, which is when you actually have good artists, which they go for, because obviously they're household names or they're just great artists. They they probably do a couple of good pages in 1 or 2 issues, but it just seems that the narrative itself is not allowing them to do much. So it's like a good actor with a bad script, basically. And then the majority of their books, so the other 95% of their books, they're just total nonsense, total rubbish. I see the art in these books, and I read a bit because obviously I'm not buying. I'll confess I'm not buying these things, but I am browsing them online as they come out, and that I confess, yes, I do. I browse them online, and what I see is like a lot of these, like the West Coast Avengers or whatever it is, and again, I go through pages and I don't remember the actual title after I read. I don't make a note of it. I'm not studying it like Richard C. Meyer is. It's like a comic book historian. I'm not doing that. I don't have the time for that. But I do browse, and what I see It's just it reminds me very much of like sort of both in the art and in the writing. It just reminds me a lot of the pamphlets, like something you hire someone to do for a school, like sexual education, so to speak. Something you hire a couple of no name low life artists. Poor guys come in and they do you like a 3, 4, 5 pages pamphlet on that, and you use that as an educational purpose because obviously, as we know, it's full of propaganda all over it, and the art is really only in service of that. There's no imagination behind it. There's no like in the beginning of our stream here, I was going over the pages of Karl's book, and you know, even though one might say that they're academically structured, they're still serving the purpose of the story. While the stuff that I see that I read at Marvel, especially Marvel, there's nothing there. He's an empty vessel. You know, it's just pictures on a paper or you know or on a digital screen. Now, Image, uh, thankfully for them, maybe not thankfully for us, is still doing a few things which can be considered okay. Well, we will risk call them avant-garde. Yeah, we're not gonna call that. That's too much for them. It's too much of a compliment for them. You know, but they're here and there. They hire guys that stylistically will do a couple of different things.
I
But
think Seven to Eternity. I just have to share because there are some like great books. Seven to Eternity. I love Seven to Eternity. Jerome Pena does the art in it. Man, that is a great book. And I think they do an Image book because you can't get that guy to draw the way he wants to draw on a Marvel book, you know, or a
yeah, I
DC
mean,
book. Like I think that that is yeah. Uh, the monthly thing, I think if it's shrinking, like if the industry is shrinking, what you have to do is make better products, you know, and that means better art, fewer titles, better stories, more bang for your buck or whatever you want to call it. And they seem to be doing the opposite. They seem to be doing more books, more meaningless stories with much worse art, and all their good artists just draw covers, you know.
oh yeah, that's yeah, that's true. They put a lot of emphasis on the cover, and they forget that you don't sell a book by the cover only. You know, that's the big old saying. You know, you never judge a book by the cover. These guys, they're very blindfolded to certain basic things in life. You know, and then on top of that, they double up the problem with by thinking they're righteous. You know, they're doing this for the sake of humanity, and that's the thing. You know, the three of us, okay, we're non-Americans, yeah, and that's the funny thing about it, about the whole thing, yeah. There's a very insular view of things, you know. These guys don't realize they're not just doing a product for the U.S. market; they're actually doing a product that is actually sold around the world. When you come here to the UK at every a newsstand agent or a airport or a bookshop, you'll have exactly the same books, exactly the same stories. They haven't been even changed the language, obviously. It's just repackaged. They just put it on omnibus or paperbacks. They're collected differently, but they're exactly the same continuity. They're exactly the same things. And when you get them translated to other languages, to Portuguese, to French, whatever, it will still be exactly the same book. So these guys are responsible for an empire. Basically, this is an editorial empire with a lot of responsibilities. They're completely oblivious to that. They don't realize that if they're injecting this this personal opinion they have about a particular government in their countries, the U.S., they don't realize that that's not going to resonate with anyone outside. I mean, yes, okay, it's common knowledge of what might be happening that these guys are left leaning, they're left wing inclined, and they might not like the current status quo. But you know they have to. They don't even think twice that before, well, I'm going to use the word vomiting all that onto the pages of their books. They're not even thinking, wait a second, we're not selling this just to left wing people. We're selling this to right wing people, and this is sold around the world. I mean, I'm sure Jerry will probably find the same books in Australia, and with some luck, they're probably translated into Japanese and Chinese, and you'll find exactly the same books there. These ideologies, they're not going to resonate with anyone else. And any other reader along the world, around the world, is just going to pick up one of their magazines, read the first 10 pages where nothing happens, and then for the next 10 pages, it's just a lecture, and there's like 1 page of action. Who's going to buy that? No one in their right mind is going to buy that. It's not a question of about the content of the story. It's just there is no story. There's nothing there. There's nothing there to keep a kid interested, let alone an adult, or keep an adult interested, let alone a kid. So do they realize how much damage they're doing? They have no clue, absolutely no clue, because they're just being very insular. They're just thinking about the domestic market. That's a big mistake. These guys are published around the world. Don't they realize that? They have their international branches. They deal with that every day. So there's a very big disassociation, inside the company, And again, mostly Marvel. Someone there is not talking to someone else. Either there are different branches there, and I don't believe the company's not that big, The publishing company's not that big. And it's the problem, again, it's a problem from the top. If the top is thinking in one way, everyone else is going to think the same way. But they really don't realize how much damage they're provoking,
Yeah, well, it's funny because if you think of Marvel, and it's like the top of Marvel is that guy Ike Perlmutter, isn't it? Or Ike Perlmutter, or is it Bob Iger? And he's like, if you talk about their politics or whatever, he's one of the he's a big donator to Trump's campaign. And so you think if he even listened to one of these editors and talked at all about the politics and the propaganda that goes into the comics, he'd shut them all down. But I think that just because even when I try to explain Comicsgate to normal people who don't read comics or anything, they just they don't even get it, They're like, what are you even talking about, You talking about Garfield? They're completely separate from it. They wouldn't even imagine that it's actually a thing. That's one of the strange things about it. It's why would you shit on so much of your customers when they're already so small,
Yeah, I mean, and that's why I think they don't necessarily care too much about the customer. They're more focused on their destruction. Lewis, you were talking about how can they destroy something like this, and knowingly, they've got a responsibility. I think they're doing it on purpose. That the idea of destruction to them is a good one. They think that by destroying these icons, they're destroying something that represents hatred. They think they're destroying the past, which is oppressive. They think that they're making way for something new and revolutionary, something that's going to lead to this more idealistic society that they have in their mind. So if you talk about destruction, they find that exciting. And if they think we have to bring this company to its knees to achieve that, they don't care. They don't really care about companies or organizations. I think the ideology is interested in the destruction of these icons so that they can create something that represents their ideology. And I think that's what I see happening. So when we see them destroying it, we think they don't know what they're doing. But when in their mind they think, wow, look how exciting we are. We were the ones who killed off these characters. But I mean, I'm not too worried about the longevity of some of the IP. I think Captain America is always going to be around. Wolverine will always be around, and I think what will live on are the good stories. It's like Greek mythology. Those characters were written about by so many different people. It wasn't just one person who wrote about Dionysus. It was that was a character that was shared collectively by everyone. And I see, and with those stories, the good ones remain. There are probably so many stories we will never hear because they've been lost time because they weren't very good. And I think that will be the same with these stories coming out at the moment. None of them will be around for very long because no one's going to remember them because they're not worth remembering, except to, from a historical standpoint where people will look back and say, look at what they tried to do here. Look, this is why it failed, and this is why we don't read these stories. But in terms of the characters themselves, these characters will always live on, and new creators will come along and be able to pour their creative energy into these characters again. And as much as they try to change who these characters are exist within the collective of those people who love them, and you can't change that. And you can't make Captain America a Nazi. Sure, you can make a book that says he is, but he's not. You can't change that to that degree, and people won't accept it. That story will just disappear, and people will write Captain America the way he's supposed to be written again. So in the meantime, we just have to suffer through this. And if Marvel takes some massive hits, maybe they can afford to do that because they're backed by Disney, these big companies. But they'll come back, I think.
I think you're completely right about them destroying it, because the thing about an ideal is that you always live in the shadow of an ideal. An ideal is always this thing that sort of you torments you and you have to live up to, and you never get to it. And that is the point of these characters, and it's also the point of art. It's why when someone takes a step back on their art, but they don't put in as much effort as they did before, people have an immediate rejection of it. Like you see that with you see that John Romita Jr. or Frank Miller or any of the biggest artists, that kind of, you can tell when they're slacking. And their whole idealistic future is based on no ideals. These sort of SJW types, whatever you want to call them, their view, their wants, their needs, they're based on hedonic degeneracy. It's based on accepting people for not moving forward at all in their life, whatsoever. And that's directly what these characters, what these mythologies speak against. And those stories where it's about the probably the greatest human story is about being enslaved and rejecting slavery. That's Moses. That's Gladiator. It's Shawshank Redemption. It's this greatest team that's run through every greatest story, and that's about living in the biggest ideal ever. So yeah, I think you're right. Like when you were saying destroying it, that really clicked with me, because they actively are, because they're such ideals to live up to. And if they can paint them as wrong, or they can paint them as everything's wrong with them because of their skin color, which is what they do with Captain America, or they do with Iron Man, or everything's wrong with this character because their gender was this way before, and so you have to accept it the other way. It's like, no, the whole thing that's supposed to be what's right about them is that we should feel shame looking at them. You should feel shame that you don't live up to this ideal, and they can't stand that. They can't stand the shame of not trying, the shame of not taking a heavy load above your head.
Yeah. So basically, what we can conclusion we can get from our little meeting of the minds here is that really these guys are using this publishing house, or they're using this industry, this medium, just as another active weapon. They weaponize these comics, just like all the press has been doing, just like the TV channels have been doing. So the written press, the televised press, and Hollywood as well. So they're using again. It's just another pawn in the entertainment industries to be used as an agenda, as a political motivation thing. And again, I mean, without any concern or respect for the properties, for the customers, and like Jerry pointed out, they don't care. This is like speaking to the guy that is drunk at the bar, planning on committing suicide. It's going to be very difficult to talk him down out of that. It's the same thing with these guys. They don't really care if they destroy the company or they destroy the IPs. All they really care is to join the bandwagon, where they have to be prevalent, where they have to, they have to raise their voices so everyone can see, ooh, I'm here, I'm talking this kind of crap. And just like the people on the street, doing the women's march and all that stuff, they just want to become relevant and join the choir. And this is just another tool, another pawn in this chessboard game, where they're using, again, something else that they can destroy, that they can attack, because they know the sort of importance these characters and these comics and these histories, these stories, the sort of importance they mean for a lot of people. And again, like Karl was pointing out, they're symbols of myths that they want to they don't respect. They want to destroy. So obviously, seen by that light, is understandable why they don't care an absolute iota if they're damaging the IPs or not, because they have no interest in preserving them. They really don't care. They want them in the garbage. They mostly, I mean, it's clear they don't even want to use those characters anymore. I mean, Thor is no longer Thor. Iron Man is no longer Iron Man. And I was surprised to see the Fantastic Four return. I was probably thinking they were going to be like four Mexicans or something like that. So it's like it's clear these guys have no interest in carrying on the old status quo. They want a revolution. But I don't see it so much as an artistic revolution. I just see it as a tool to further their propaganda, their own individual propaganda, and hence the complaint. Don't use these things for that. Go out and create an imprint that talks about that. Like a couple of guys now have done a few Kickstarters like that, where they're actively doing a comic book, which is politically driven. So democratic, left wing, whatever you want to call it. That sort of ideology, it's driven that way.
I don't even think that it matters that they're left or right or whatever. I think that the main problem is authoritarianism. That's really what it is, because you can't really escape a conversation between left or right. But it's the idea of the motive for these things being pushed, that they're pushed not to help people but to sedate people. It's sort of.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a takeover. I mean, it's a complete takeover of these people. Whoever has these ideas and want to propagate them in these industries, they obviously been infiltrating step by step. And when I say infiltrating, meaning they've been getting jobs and working in them and going up the ranks slowly. And people obviously have their own political opinions and their own ideas, but it's kind of ingrown movement inside companies that over the years has happened. And yeah, it's authoritarian. I mean, these guys, it's the same in academia. Like again, the teachers, Karl teachers, it's the same thing. It's these people. They have one vision, one idea, and they stick to it. And whoever else does not play the role and obeys what they think is correct, then you're basically burned. You straight away are too much of a rebel for them to handle. And that's been the cross in my life. These people are everywhere, and it's always a fight to get your voice across. It's really you and them. It's a battleground, really. And yeah, I mean, these guys are all in high places. They all control a lot of in terms of the entertainment industry. Now they're both studio heads when it comes to film studios, and they're both the editors in chief when it comes to publishing houses. So yeah, they're everywhere. They're like those guys in V, the Final Battle, the TV series. They're the lizard people. They've taken over.
Yeah, and I mean that's the only way they can do it, really, because then they can manipulate the market. Because it is about censorship for them. They can only compete if they have manipulated the market to the point where there is no competition. There are no other ideas, no alternatives. So luckily, we can have a voice online. Luckily, we don't need the institutions like we did 20, 30 years ago. We can reach an audience in a way that they can't. I mean, that's why they can't really exist too well on Kickstarter, because at the end of the day, people don't really want to read it. I don't mind reading political comics, even if it's on the extreme left, if it's written well. I can still read it and see it for what it is. I can still see where their politics comes through. But if they write a good story, it's still a good story. And as long as there's the alternative, though, as long as I can read something on the extreme left, something in the middle, something all over the place, I get the choice. I get to choose what I want to buy. But if it's just their horrible comics that they're trying to push, that will never work in a free market. So they have to censor, they have to control, they have to bully people out. They're scared of an alternative because they know deep down their ideas don't stand up, their quality doesn't stand up, so they have to shut it down. So I think this infiltration of these institutions is on purpose so that they can control. It's just lucky for us. We live in a time where we do have access to the market. We can reach out and be the alternative, which is great for us because people are looking for an alternative because they're not buying what is being sold to them. So
yeah, but it's one of the like when we talk about the customers, not liking what they're being sold, and the way you were talking about how these people infiltrate the editors in chief and how they don't listen to the customers, they don't even rely on it, they push people out that they don't like. The reason why they can do all that is because they actually don't sell to customers, they sell to stores. And the stores can't even return the books. If these stores were able to return the books, have you seen like all the leftovers Iceman that people have been sharing, posting up? Like, if stores were able to return the books within 6 months, these companies would be gone. And so what they do is they don't sell to customers, not beholden to customers, but everybody else is. We are. Like if someone buys directly from my Etsy, they're buying directly from a cache of books that I know where they are. I know who is picking them up and dropping them to the mail, to the post office. So it's not that's the difference. Like we're fundamentally customer driven. They're not customer driven whatsoever. They just have to get the book. They just have to convince the stores to buy the book. And if they can say that buying this book makes you a nicer person, so buy 20 to 200 of them, they'll do that. And that's what they've been doing. That's why they've been pushing all these things. It's like, buy this book. Why? Because look how nice everything about it is. Don't ask about the story.
You're right. Those stores are closing, aren't they? They're just what is it? In a year or a couple of years, the number of stores have just halved, and they continue to close because they are being destroyed by these companies, forcing them to buy this product and not being able to return it. So, I mean, hopefully that changes.
They are closing order changing. They just sort of become these pop culture stores instead of comic book stores, which isn't a bad thing. But it's like, when people are selling more Funko Pop toys than they are comic books, you should be worried, because those stores, do you think those stores are really going to hang on to the books when they can sell that stupid plastic figure for way more than that? Like I'm getting toys made for my book, and I'm like, I was looking at some figures there that like Marvel Legend figures or whatever, and I was selling these handmade, hand sculpted, hand painted toys for nearly half the price of some of these Marvel figures. And I was like, how are they getting away with this, So those things are doing better than comics, that's worrying.
It's not sustainable, is it? It's they're it's gonna get to a point where they're either going to have to change, or the market is going to change. The way that we reach out to customers is going to change, and I think the people at Comicsgate are building up a different system. Reaching out through Indiegogo or through other means, that will become the new way people create comics if these stores don't change, or if Diamond doesn't change, or the Marvel doesn't change. So
that's another part of the problem is Diamond. Diamond fucking having a monopoly basically.
Yeah, because I don't think we can get our books into those shops. It's almost impossible for us to get our books there unless we go through Diamond. If they don't like what we're selling, or if they get pressure from Marvel, then we're out. We've been censored. So.
Well, for me, I literally I drop books in. Like I might meet the guys that run that store at a convention or whatever, and I'm like, here, take 10.
Are you selling them at shops, your book, Karl, or it's just through the Etsy?
There's a couple of stores that have them in Dublin and some in Derry and a couple of places all over Ireland, but I don't know what the state is of it. Like I don't know how much they have left, and we haven't gotten around to a lot since we've done chapter 2.
Right.
So I doubt any of them have any left now.
Because the guys at Revolve Comics are basically handling the distribution, I guess, yeah?
Yeah. Well, no, like when it comes to the store stuff, like it's really local stuff. It's like stores that have like Irish creator sections or whatever.
Right, yeah.
Will just store it, And
go around to the local shops and just try to squeeze your product in. Yeah, that's
basically what it is,
I mean, you actually brought in a good point to do with the merchandise, actually, because that's something I've noticed that shift as well in the market. I came to a point that I go into one of the major comic shops and I see, bloody hell, man, there's like a 3/4 of merchandise, and I'm like thinking the merchandise now is actually bigger than the original product. So the original product that created this character is like a comic book, and they probably have like 1 or 2 copies, or maybe it's not even available anymore, and then you have all this merchandise. Well, up to a certain point, it's a statement, to the fame and the popularity of a particular art piece. But at the same time, it's like, Jesus Christ, there's more plastic here than paper.
Yeah, I think comics need to go back to being like shameful. Like it was shameful to step into a comic store. I think that needs to happen. I think the Big Bang Theory killed cool comics.
Well, again, it all comes down to the same problem that we're having, because Toys R Us is closed. And again, there's a lot of the impetus to try to centralize everything, isn't it? So the comic book shop is a merchandise shop and is a toy shop. And most likely as well, like here in UK, we got Forbidden Planet. And it also becomes the DVD shop, the Blu-ray shop, and the CD shop. So you have a multimedia entertainment shop with everything in it, basically, where the comics really is just one more thing to it. Although, fair enough, they still have a whole floor devoted to it. And to be honest, anyone coming here to Europe from outside of Europe, you go to one of these shops, and if you go to the biggest ones, you really will find a lot of entertainment there, and you'll find a lot of titles, not only from the major publishers, from also a lot of indie labels. They will not carry any of our books. That's a whole different story, because that's what Cherry was talking about, Diamond. And I think Diamond, to get into a Diamond catalog, you basically just have to pay these guys a fee, isn't it? And you basically just buy advert space on one of their pages. The only problem is then the shops still have to order the titles. And that's where the grind is. Most shops will not request anything from Diamond unless they know the creator and the work. So that is a hurdle we will always be up against, unless, of course, you go through the mom and pop shop, which is what the guys like Ethan and the other ones are hoping to get. Is they will pass by Diamond. Well, in the case of Ethan, they can, those big name guys, they can easily get inside Diamond, unless there is political manipulation behind it, and they don't actually let him go on to the catalog. But even if they don't go to the catalog, what they're mostly interested in trying, especially Richard C. Meyer, is trying to get these books into the smaller comic book shops. the ones that won't have to be so reliant on the Diamond catalog, on the Diamond distribution system, and just starting to get these books, these uh, under under brackets, these comic Kate's books directly into the shops. I think that is the principle of the distribution idea that these guys might have, is to try to cut the middleman and to try and fudge their new titles, which are completely unaffiliated with any major publishers, directly into the comic book shops, at least the smaller to medium-sized comic book shops, and maybe not the biggest ones. I don't know if there's any franchise of comic book shops in the US. I'm completely out of the loop there, but you know,
Yeah,
we
we
have.
have a Forbidden Planet over here in Dublin,
Yeah, that's
and
the same. That's the same here. Yeah,
yeah, well,
yeah,
I love Forbidden Planet because they're a franchise, they actually have to act professional, you know. And there's been other stores you've seen online, and you see these stores from like all over the world now, because you see everyone interacting on Twitter that are actively going after people or actively going after customers. I've never
yeah.
had that with Forbidden Planet. Forbidden Planet are all beholden to professional because they're a franchise, you know, because it's not the dude stacking the shelf does not own the store. He's not attached to it, you know. And that's actually one of the things I love about it.
Bottom line, this is all to do. Basically, this is the old ghost of censorship. It's like a problem that we thought had gone away, but it's never gone away. Basically, in the 50s, you had the blacklist problem, you know, with the American government blacklisting all the script writers and
You mean
comedians.
McCarthyism?
McCarthy, of course, yes. I mean, of course,
Yeah.
back then it was the other way around. Actually, they were trying to silence what was deemed as left wing, and but you had a lot of guys that obviously were not directly associated with any communist movement, but they got swept by a moral panic. And then in the 70s and the 80s, again, it was the same moral panic with the heavy metal music and the Satanists, and anything from video games, which start picking up in the early 80s, to comics and films. They also got they got another moral panic stamped on top of them, and then and now this is another moral panic. You know, is now it's the other way around. Now they're trying to fight these elusive Nazis that are bringing out of the walls. And again, these things come and go. So it's the old ghost of censorship that everyone outside of the main industries. So even if it was the underground comic scenes from the 60s, starting in San Francisco and all that, or even if it is like the more elitist European graphic novels from the 70s, it's always an ongoing fight against the established censorship, no matter what face it takes, and no matter what position it takes. It's always the same old fight, isn't it? It's the guys in the status quo trying to to make sure that everyone follows the line, you know, of what should be published, what should be released. So we really haven't progressed much from the 50s. We're still in the same problem. This is still the same old battle. It's just it has different faces and different names. In the end of the day, that's my general opinion about it.
Yeah, but I think we're in a much better position now because of the internet. You know, I remember when I was learning about McCarthyism back in school, I was thinking, how is this even possible that the West could have gone through something so drastic so recently? Surely people are more clever than that. I remember I was shocked at it, but you know, we're still seeing the same types of censorship happening now. But the thing is, I mean, it was much more serious back then. That was the whole nation. With Comicsgate, it's just the comic book community. I don't think, although I mean, there's still variations of this happening with other movies, other media, with video games and everything. But luckily, we have the internet. We can connect with one another. We can get out there and put our voice out as well. And yeah, I just see it as a challenge. And end of the day, I think if you have a really good product, you'll find a way to get it through. So for me, I just see it as a way to just keep making my comic book better and better and better until it can't be ignored. You know, so I think that's the key. If you have a good product, especially with the internet now, it will find an audience. And so I'm not. Yeah, it will come to an end. I don't think it will get as bad as McCarthyism because we have more control. We have a voice, a platform that we can speak out on. So
Yeah, that's what changes the landscape, isn't it? Is really is the internet because 40, 50 years ago, up to 60 years ago, then those tools weren't there. Now the other side can actually fight back. They can actually show what they got, and they can actually even no need the platform at all. They just set themselves out there. They release their own stuff, and then obviously they pick up customers along the way, and they pick up a following, and they can actually make a living out of it if necessary, and if they're lucky enough. And like you say, if the product is good enough. So yeah, we are in a different position now as the guys, the writers back in the 50s and the stand-up comedians of the 60s and so on and so on and so forth. We are probably in the better position of all of them. But again, it still really is again the old moral panic and the old censorship taking over. I was just noticed that we have a few people. We managed to pick up quite a few viewers, well, quite a few for this channel. And if anyone on the chat that is watching us has any further questions for the creators here, so I know there's probably we got some folks that follow your work anyway, so they're probably already.
I see in the chat Vosto Vlad. You guys should check him out. He does synthwave music. It's badass, and I actually need to get back onto him because I want to commission him to make a Death Spawn theme song.
Awesome. Oh, by the way, anyone on the chat wanting to leave their links, they're quite welcome to. Here, I don't want to exercise any censorship over anyone. So some channels they got moderators and all that stuff. We're not that big yet. So, but then anyone, if they want to exchange here any Twitter handles or give us their YouTube channels, whatever they have, quite welcome to put it on the chat now. So anyone has any questions here regarding regarding Karl's work and Jerry's work? So Death Sworn or Anchor Face, now it's the time. It's getting already too early for Jerry. I'm sure he has to have his breakfast soon.
I've had a coffee. It's all good.
Yeah, the coffee. Well, he needs his eggs and bacon now. So I mean, I presume you eat bacon, yeah.
And now we got Amy in the chat as well. She's a great artist too. She does real cool cyberpunk comics, real badass stuff. So you should follow her as well.
We'll have to check that, Amy. If you want to leave your way we can find you, any kind of art page you have or anything else, just type it in. And yeah, so whoever is watching, if they have anything they want to know. So Karl, issue 3 is coming when?
Oh,
I got a big audience, man. They're waiting for it.
Oh yeah, I know. That was the thing. Like when people sort of start picking up online and going passing around, it was right when I finished the second one. Like it was literally when it went to print, and so everyone's like, "When's chapter 3 coming out?" And I'm like, "Oh God, you guys don't know the hell that I went through with chapter 2." But once I get into the thumbnail and I know and I have, because the thumbnails for me are always the hardest because I really have to get it the way I want it, and really know what I'm going in for. But while my screen's up, I'm gonna go through some pages and stuff I thought I'd share.
Yeah, that's what we want to watch.
Some spoiler stuff. Here's some more from chapter 2. Page that I really like. I don't know if it's coming up yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's up.
Yeah, oh yeah, we can see it. Yeah. I'm gonna fix your screen so we only watch you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so this is all spoilery stuff, but whatever. Back again.
It's great, man. Yeah, as long as you don't lose the grip on the plot of the way you set up the pages, man, it's still all very good, man. All very solid. It's 5 issues altogether. Yeah? That's great. Well, this one we've seen before. Those ones, the other ones were new though, but they're still from issue 2, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, those ones were all from issue 2. But yeah, it's gonna be 5 issues. It's pretty cool because it's all like I have it all structured out issue by issue. There's kind of like a different. Uh, it's not every issue touches on the same sort of tempo or the same speed or whatever. Chapter 3 is gonna be really sort of internal. Sort of, it's gonna be more of an insight. These characters kind of are in their sort of underworld, their shadow now, and so that's kind of a much more feely, getting inside their heads issue. Chapter 4 is like an all-out war, like it's action every single panel, every single thing, and then 5 goes back to being really intense, small, structured between just the main guys, and that finishes it off. And
Okay.
yeah,
All right, and well, Carl has a big following. These friends are all here. Anybody wants to ask Jerry anything related to Anchor Face? He's a quite unusual character. Kind of, I really thought he was more of an allegory when I first saw it, the boat and all that. But it turns out he must be a very interesting concept, very interesting story. I don't know if anyone wants to get Primark Sanguinius. It's got an odd question. Says you guys think that black and white can be more beautiful than colored artwork? All right, well there you go. I mean, Cherry's an art teacher, and we got Carl here, which kicked his art teachers in the butt. So we got a question here from Primark. You guys think that black and white can be more beautiful than colored artwork? Well, it is a deeper question than that, isn't it? Because it's got a lot of answers to it. Like there's a lot of grays in between black and white, isn't it? But well, the ball is in your court. What do you guys think? You prefer? Well, when you say art, you mean comic book art, or just generally speaking? Well, what do you guys think? Black and white or color? I guess in comics, just to kind of limit the possibility of answers.
I'll show some of my inks if you want to see them. Some of my black and whites. I think it depends. Like I would like to do a black and white, like just do the inks of Deathspawn. I think that would be cool to
That's
get
pretty
that
cool, man.
where I could do that.
Pretty cool.
But
I
I don't
can see
know.
where
It's
you go
sort
with
of
the colors of red. That's pretty good.
yeah. I think it's down to your taste. I think like it's when they're separated. I can see the way like you can put all your focus into just doing black and white, and then you send it to the colorist. That's cool. Like I don't think it's really. I don't know. It's like so subjective. It's like I don't know.
Yeah, and I could see now what you meant with your gray washes. What you were saying before you actually go on the colors. I could see now with those inks there. What do you think, Jerry? Would you have your book in line outlines only, in the line art only, or you believe your book only won't be complete without the watercolors?
I think this one will be just watercolors, but I think the question, it can be both. It depends how it's done. I think black and white can be very beautiful, and and colors can be used incorrectly. I think it just depends on how it's done. I think both can be great, and just yeah, again, personal taste as well. Maybe I'll do a black and white version. I mean, when I was first starting to draw around Anchor Face, I was also looking at some of the older 20s, 30s comic books as well. I was even looking at old Popeye comics for some inspiration. So that, there's some old black and white comics that would be fun to draw upon for inspiration. So yeah, I personally prefer color, but yeah, the black and white can also be just as powerful. Just depends how it's done, really.
Well, Popeye was. I hadn't thought about that. As a point of reference. So it has been an inspiration to you, those old Popeye strips.
Yeah, just that era of comics, and it kind of fits in line with the era of tattoos that I'm looking at for inspiration as well. And of course, being the sailor theme, yeah, just that era. It's a place I like to draw upon for this comic book. So. Mm.
Yeah, I like what Vostu is saying. He travels and offends unexpected cultures. So that's obviously related to Anchor Face. So he's gonna travel around exotic cultures and offending it, offending them.
What
Accidentally, yeah,
happens?
for sure.
What happens when Angerface headbutt someone? Like, is
Yeah,
it
well,
just the?
it's
I can
metal. That's
imagine
metal
just
on his
brains going
face.
everywhere.
For sure, for sure. I mean, it depends on whether he's activated his power or not. But I think without the power, if he headbutts someone, it's still metal anchor on his face. So yeah, that's it's gonna hurt for sure.
Well, guys, maybe one last pitch of where we can find your products. So, Carl, if you want to go ahead and tell us exactly where people can find you. I mean, I put in a link to your shop where's the only place we can find your book. Um, that's Sworn, right? There's no other place you can
Yep.
get it. But if there is any
Yep.
other place, then just go ahead and can give us now
Yep.
the
Well,
plug.
the Etsy is really the only place to get it online. I think you can get digital ones there as well. Uh, so Etsy, if it's ever in stores, that's usually just something I post up on my Twitter, which is my Twitter, my Instagram, everything. It's just Karl Rowe, Karlo or double UE. But yeah, that's everything to find me. Is just my name. So is anyone there?
Whoa, Lewis, have we lost him?
Nope.
I don't know.
Oh no, sorry, I'm still here. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just saying for anyone, I had muted myself by mistake. For anyone not picking up that, I did leave the description, yeah, below. But Jerry, do you want to tell us, apart from your Indiegogo, where else can we find you?
Apart from Indiegogo, just Twitter, I think. At the moment, that's Jerry Anchor on Twitter. And I've got an Instagram, but I forget what it is. So I think I linked to it on my Twitter. So yeah, Indiegogo and Twitter is where you can get me.
Oh, you got the Instagram one as well. Okay, very good. We got a question here from Sam C. If I'm going to relaunch Chromosome. Yeah, right. So, yeah, I'm the poor bastard behind Chromosome 96. It just finished last night. I had put it a goal which was maybe a little bit too ambitious. I was trying to buy off two issues with one because the second one is pretty much ready as well. Yes, I will be relaunching it. I'm just not exactly sure when. It's still depending on a couple of factors, but it's probably either before the end of this year to then be shipped in the beginning of the next one. Because whoever does these things, you definitely want to avoid Christmas, the whole of December as a time to actually post your books. If not, then it will be in spring next year. We'll see. We'll be offering issue one and two at the same time, so there'll be a different price level for each perk, but the whole thing probably be more accessible. So
Are
yeah.
you going to are you going to split them like issue one and two, or are you going to put them into one? Like a mini graphic novel.
Oh, now they will still be split, so be literally two issues in the package. So 20 something pages each. Much later on, if we get to complete the whole 5 issues, it's like your run is 5 issues as well, then we'll do the paperback at the
Yeah,
later on.
that's actually going to be one of the goals, and I don't know, this might be crazy right now, but I might if when I finish the five, and if I try to do a collected edition, I might go in and recolor it, so it's all under like one cohesive scheme instead of being split up between me sort of growing in between each one, like a remastered one. So it's just something different, mix up everything I need to do,
That's a nice idea, but they're all looking very well for what I've seen of both pages of the first one and the second one. They're all looking very similar, very sustainable. So you might not have a major contrast there, to be honest, to worry about. My book is different because actually in my book, each similar to what Jerry was saying, that he might have plans for future issues where different artists are going to handle the art, or at least slightly different styles. I've actually catered this chromosome in the same way. So each issue, actually, although I do all the line work, the colors are handled in a completely different fashion. So actually, I got the more detailed painterly style in the first one, and then the second issue, for example, it's a bit more flat. It's a bit more like a cell shading almost, and then so on and so forth. So each issue is actually handled in a different way. So I'm pretty sure your book will look pretty good as a trade because you know the colors are all very strong in Deathsworn, and they all look very precise. Mine will probably be very different as a trade. It'll be quite interesting to see, what Jerry's planning, for example, to see like 5 or 6 different issues, and all of them looking slightly different is always quite of a challenge, an interesting outlook to see how they actually will show up, how they will look in a trade paperback format. So that will be cool. All right, guys. I think we'll have to go by now. Unless you guys have anything else you want to go over.
Buy Anchor Face.
Also, Death Swan. Make sure you get a copy of that on Etsy.
I'm definitely getting. What it is with indie releases is that I'm always hoping that I go into a store and I get as many as possible in one go. So I'm always waiting for the next issue. And then I say to myself, I'm not going to get just the first issue now. This guy's coming up with a second one straight away or soon enough. So I wait for the second one. And right now I'm waiting for a third one on Karl's work, But yeah,
that's actually an interesting thing I noticed. I know we should be winding down, but when I had the first chapter and we were going around doing conventions and whatever, people just have one to buy. They just go up and they buy chapter 1, And then when I had chapter 2 out, the only people who were buying one issue were the people who were picking up chapter 2. Anybody else who was picking up chapter 1 were also buying chapter 2. So it's like people actually want more of it even before they get into it, if it's their thing, Like that's one of the cool things. Even online, when I saw people buying from the Etsy and they show me, it's almost always 1 and 2. They're not even they're like they're going full in. They're not even testing the waters to see if they like it,
Yeah, I like the idea of having the first issue a little bit exclusive anyway. So I think my plan is when I come back with issue number 2 on Indiegogo, you can only buy issue 1 in the one combined book of issue 1 and 2, and I'll sell issue 2 as a standalone book as well. So those people who buy issue number 1, the single edition, that they're going to have a very rare copy. I'm not going to reprint it as a single book. I'll reprint it as 1 and 2 combined, and then also sell number 2 separately. And then number 3 will be 1, 2, 3 combined in the one book, and then issue 3 separately. So I like the idea of issue 1 being a much rarer exclusive issue just for these first Indiegogo backers. And because I assume if people are going to buy number 3, then they're obviously going to want 1 and 2 as well, so they can get that in the one book, printed as one book. So
you'll do a trade for issue 2 and 1 together. Is that what you're saying?
So each time there'll be the single edition, but also there'll be the combined 1 and 2 together as a single book, and also the combined 1, 2, 3 together as a standalone book. And so each issue that comes out, there'll be the bigger book to buy, and then there'll be the single issue. But for those who buy issue number 1 now, this is the only time I'm going to be putting it out there as a standalone issue number 1 book. So it will be very rare.
Yes,
we'll see how we go.
But that will give you double work on the next campaign, though, because you'll be printing a floppy, which is for issue 2, but also kind of, I guess that issue 2 and 1 together, you can still probably fudge it as just a stapled book. But when you get to issue 3, you probably need something with, like a trade, basically, a paperback thing, right? Because it'll be too thick. Be too many pages.
I think even if you just read it, so when you do number 2, people will be able to get number one, but you just kind of you make it clear that this is a like I don't know, call it like the foam face edition or the late edition or something, so people know that it's like it's not the original, it's not the first print in, or it's not the first Indiegogo round. It's like you're getting the late one, like maybe a variant cover, or you change a bit of the insides or whatever, you know.
That's a good idea. Yeah, maybe even putting it on the issue itself, the first print edition, uh, Indiegogo exclusive, or something like that, somewhere in
Yeah,
the book. That's a good idea.
Indiegogo exclusive first wave edition, you know,
First wave,
because
I
then
like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the idea of these Indiegogo things is mostly as a launch platform. So the idea Jerry has, is offer the single issues individually, campaign by campaign, and then once the original campaign has ended, that's it. Your opportunity to get their one of a kind exclusive edition is gone. I think that's precisely the value that I see in crowdfunding. Is that you become a sponsor, you become a patron of the arts, and you sponsor that one of a kind product that you'll never see in stores, and it will be exclusively catered kind of to you as a sponsor of the art, and that's it. That's why it's an exclusive thing. That's why it's worth the money that you put in it, which is usually a bit more expensive than the regular mass-produced comic from anyone else. So yeah, I mean that's the way I see crowdfunding. Basically, it's not so much as well. It is partially a vehicle for you to launch yourself, hopefully a career, but also really in the end of the day, it's mainly to launch a product, and that product should be something special. Should be something that's that's why they say it's handmade. Carl, you got something like that on your website, isn't it? You guys say it's made with ink and love, isn't it? Ink.
Yeah, I think it's like Ink and Love and whatever, and it's from the Emerald Isle or some cheesy thing.
By the way, I
It
wanted to
goes
ask
for
you,
yeah.
how do you handle how are you handling the printing of your book? Is it print on demand? Because obviously you're not using the crowdfunding platforms. You just have the open store, and you manage to put the book in a few bookstores. So how are you handling that? Because as people go to your store and buy copies, you're then printing as you go, or you've printed a large batch and you're just keeping those and mailing them as you need. How are you doing that? Just out of curiosity.
Well, as part of that, I mean, most of what we sell goes back into keeping this thing going, you know. So yeah, it's like if we're running low and we're going to a con, it's like let's get another batch, you know. And it's a local printer, Danny, who like runs Revolve. He's up in Derry. Like I'm in Dublin. He's up in Derry. Derry's at the northmost city in Ireland, you know. So he has a local printer. So if we're going to a con and we need extra books, it's like okay, yeah, 50 extra ones, you know, and we'll just sell all them. And or if we're going to a bigger one, we'll get more, you know.
All right. Okay. So you're printing on demand basically. That's
Yeah.
how it is. It's
But I know that there's like specific. I tell you, man, like there's specific places that when they do print on demand, it's literally that. Like when you buy one book, they just print it and get it out, you know.
well. I presume you have the same problem that I would have. I mean, surely you cannot print a batch of less than 50 copies. I would presume, right?
Yeah,
Unless
50
obviously
is the
50 is the
50 is
minimum,
the low.
the absolute minimum, and it still will come with a large cover price. Is that still enough to cover? I mean, is your price tag, is your cover price still enough to cover your printing expenses? You're selling each issue at £4. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. Like
And
it's
you still
not,
yeah.
like you're not. I don't think, especially because we've been so like I've been so slow to get support and get back in and get any real amount of eyes on this that You know, it's not like we're making like buckets loads on Dead Sworn. You know, it's enough to get in and get more books done and keep it going and keep pushing it forward. You know, and
That's right, man.
that's what I like about it. As long as it's this self-funding thing that keeps going, and if people like it, then we can do more. You know, we keep doing more.
Okay. Well, the book
But
is
that's why
pretty
I
cool.
want to set up so much, you know, extra stuff. That's sort of, you know, it's going to be way pricier in the book. If we're in the book for like pretty regular, pretty cheap.
Can you put it on Amazon or anything like that? Comixology?
Yeah, I don't even know how you go through that, because I would assume that because they all ship from a warehouse, so I would assume that you'd have to like leave some books in a warehouse or something.
I think you can handle it as personally as a small business. Basically, it's just you get orders through, and then you fulfill the orders just as you would fulfill your Etsy orders. I think that's I never put it a book on sale on Comixology or anything like that, but I think that's the way. It's just really a storefront for your stuff. So you just like selling on eBay, really. You sell it, and then you just have to come up with a product and ship it. I think that's how it is. Basically, you don't need to hand over a PDF to a printing house somewhere in US or anything like that. It's just you fulfill your own orders. I think that's what it is. I, bel I believe it's like that, and being like that, it would just be another venue basically for your product, because you know it's a great product, and pretty sure if it's in more than one place, you might have more people spotting it because everyone goes through Amazon and through Comixology on a daily basis, even if they're not looking for your product exclusively, they will come across it. So I don't know if Jerry has any opinion about this, about putting books up on Comixology, which is the Amazon comic book branch, or any other storefront. Any ideas on that?
I haven't looked too much into it myself, actually, but I'm kind of liking this Indiegogo setup. I like the idea of just doing it as a one-off event, and then move on to the next event, and then move on to the next event. Sort of build up some expectations for keeping an eye out when the next one's coming out, and having to be in on it while it's there. I mean, I could have it up somewhere permanently, but in terms of printing and sending it off, I would be doing that all by myself. So, you know, if I can get it done just in the one go, the one event, then that seems to be the way I'd prefer to go about it. Then I can just focus on making the next issue rather than also reprinting, resending continuously. So, I mean, there's probably a lot of options out there for me, but I think I'm just going to stick with the Indiegogo setup at the moment, see where
Yeah,
it goes.
fair enough. Yeah, I mean, it's also it's a sign facility that you know it's easy to use. And again, one can always create, which is also my intention. One can always create a schedule for the release of every book, like a 6 months window in between, or 3 months, or whatever you can do. You know. So yeah, as long as again, like a lot of people in the chat are saying, as long as there is a following, and people, the fans know, are informed when the books are coming out. So then you create a certain discipline within your customers, of them coming back to you every time a new issue is due to be released. So yeah, the Indiegogo and all this crowdfunding can also work basically as stores, really, as just release stores. So, all right, guys. Well, I think we'll have to go by now. If we do these streams too long, then people probably be bored of watching them from beginning to the end. So we did quite well here, more than 2 hours, almost three. Anything else you guys wanna? Anything else you guys wanna say? Anything at all? You already plugged your product. Everything is in place. Any last thoughts, like a Jerry Springer kind of thought of the day?
What's the most Jerry Springer thing I can say about that sworn?
Like E-Man says in the end of every episode, you know, Masters of the Universe. I was listening the other day why they had that thing in the end of E-Man. I forgot the reason why. But there was a reason why at every end of Masters of the Universe episode there was kind of a thought of the day. I just can't remember what it was.
Yeah, no, I've watched all those He-Man documentaries. I love that.
All right.
It was something about violence of it, you know, because He-Man was such a mixed bag, because when they released the toys, the actual comic books that came with the toys were really like violent, like they were pretty dark. And then when it came to making the cartoons, they had to turn Skeletor from this bad guy into like this like George Costanza villain, you know, and they had to make everybody into dopes and colorful and put people in pink leotards and stuff.
Yes.
And I think it was just another thing to take away from the like, because He-Man was regularly picking up a boulder and throwing it at someone. So you have to kind of have a little message after it.
Yeah, I do remember the art that was exclusive to the comics. It was made by the guy that actually designed the concept art, wasn't it? It was the same guy. It was he's basically a painter, isn't he? And
yeah, there was a ton of like big pros that worked on that book. I think Bruce Timm worked on the comic, and like real big comic book guys worked on the mini comic as well, doing different stuff for it. But yeah, I love all that. Like Deathsworn is clearly like inspired by a lot of that stuff. And I like that big open world where it's like you can throw in sci-fi and fantasy and mythology elements and all this stuff into it, where it molds and it works because it's
all that retro 80s vibe. It's good to see all the younger people going liking so much the 80s style of stuff.
I have the taste of someone twice my age.
That's great. Very good. Well, you got a long day coming. I think you're going to be in another it's either podcast or a live stream, isn't it?
Oh, I'm gonna be on with Matt Wenger, who does Aldrake, the Aldrake webcomic. Him and Jeremy Ninefingers and Berserker do a turbo stream. Those guys are like the big shift in the turbo hashtag guys, and they try to do one every weekend. So they purposely decided to do a breakfast stream for me, so that it will be 12 noon for them, and it will be 4 p.m.
Oh, all right, okay. And Jerry, you're probably gonna hit the sack again, or you're gonna start working straight away on the book.
Just start working, yeah. Just start drawing straight away. So the whole day's ahead of me. It's going to be a good one.
Okay, guys. So Jerry, have a very good day, and
yeah, thanks for having me on. And yeah, head over to Indiegogo, check out Anchor Face for issue number 1, and follow me on Twitter at Jerry Anchor. And also, Karl, it's really nice to meet you too. And Deathsworn, I'm going to have to get myself a copy of that as well.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, no, it was great being on. Yeah, I'm definitely picking up Anchor Face.
Yeah, Jerry still has a few days to go on his campaign. And, well, Karl is going to go to sleep now. So am I. I was actually gonna finish to watch that movie with Ryan Reynolds, where he starts off being Ben Kingsley, and then he's an old billionaire, and he dies, and he has his mind transferred to Ryan Reynolds' body, and he's starting to feel very much like a Twilight Zone episode. And actually, I don't know if you guys know this, but IDW has a Twilight Zone series. They actually that they franchise the name, and they're doing Twilight Zone comics. I don't know if they're still doing that, but they were doing it a few years back. And their issue 1 is this story. So I'm just gonna see where this is going, and then maybe I'll go to sleep. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for coming. All right, I'm just gonna go.
Thanks
off
very
now.
much, Lewis.
No problem. Thanks, man.
Bye bye, everyone in the chat. Bye bye.
Thanks,
Thank you for coming.